At Highlands, and you don't have to stand here, but when you talk, if you would project, because they'll be able to hear you,
Okay.
and they can see everything you put up on the screen.
Okay.
Okay?
Sounds good.
So because it took me so friggin' long to get that sorted out, I'm not going to say another word, and I'm going to let David take over, and he's going to talk to you today about accessibility and disability awareness.
Good afternoon, guys. So, yeah, my office is over there in Felix Martinez building. The really fun part is I did a survey a couple years ago, and basically like 58% of staff, students, and faculty didn't know we had a disability services office.
50%?
A little over 50 of the respondents that we had, right? So, Lauren asked me to do a little thingy basically on not so much disability awareness. I kind of went on disability etiquette because from my understanding what she wanted me to do was like, you guys are going to go be working in museums and stuff, or like practicums or whatever you call them. And so it's kind of real important that you understand how do you interact with somebody that has a disability and how you do not. So just some real quick basic facts, like right now, 13% of all colleges of the population, the student population, have a disability. That's up from like 8% in 2000. And it's not so much that more people have disabilities, it's just that more people are taking advantage of their ability to go to college and to attend and learning about new ways that they can do it. And basically what you have here is a lot of the software, the technology that's available now wasn't available to them at that time. So they were just shut out. I mean, way back in the thing, going back to my social work days, in the 20s and, yeah, I'd say the 10s and the 20s, people with disabilities were euthanized. They were put, yeah, you were euthanized because they didn't want to spread the genes. You didn't want them to procreate and have other children that might have disabilities. So yeah, they were either put away in homes or they were actually just like, yeah, this is in the United States. Okay. So there's been some like really good advancements. Can I say it's wonderful now in 2015? ADA was put in effect in 1992. All right, that is 40 years almost, right? Or 50 years. And we're still not there. As far as equal access, equal opportunities, no. Student, if you graduate from college with your degree in media arts or whatever, chances of you finding employment are probably, you might have 5% unemployment, you trying to find unemployment. A student getting the same degree with a disability, their unemployment rate's around 45 to 50%. Okay, so it's not so much that they can't do the work, it's sometimes, a lot of times, they're not given the opportunity because you might cost me a lot of money if I hire you. I might have to buy a computer, I might have to hire an interpreter, I might have to do a lot of things. So it's not where we'd like it to be, but it's come a long way from when I even started, and I started doing this in 2006. So the life of a disability coordinator on average is about 3 years. just because you can. So, but I wanted to do real fast, if I could find my spot, and they can see my screen, right?
Yeah, you can go ahead and open up the Word document on the screen. Yeah, just double click on it.
Wow. I'm not good with Macs.
Oh, here, I'll help you. What do you want? You want to make it bigger?
Yeah, so they can
Okay.
see it. Can you see that, guys? So just a real quick quiz for you guys. I was going to hand it out and have you guys answer it, but we'll just do it.
Can you read that? Mm-hmm. Yes.
So it is obvious if somebody has a disability, true or false? False. Yes, false. Hidden disabilities are everywhere, learning disabilities. For the most part, physical disabilities make up a small portion of the population. Here at Highlands, I would say 95% of the students enrolled in my office have a learning disability. Okay. Individuals that are blind or have a visual impairment have a sixth sense or are unable to recognize your choice and scent. Therefore, you can assume that there's no need for you to identify yourself. True or false?
False.
Yeah, it's false. Their senses are heightened. I am amazed at what people that are blind or deaf or stuff can do basically with their other senses. But it's really important so that if you enter a room, it's kind of important that you introduce yourself. Because you can't just be there and then you can't just say, oh, hi Lauren, how you doing, if she's blind, because they have no idea what you're saying. So if you're going to interact with somebody who's blind, say, hi, this is David Escobar from New Mexico Highlands University, they really want to be, they kind of know you. Hi, this is David, I was just wondering, so they can like that. The one thing you do not also want to do is, hi, this is David, how you doing? Oh, now I'm working, because they will interact and they'll know where you were from your voice. Okay, so it's really kind of rude to actually move without letting them know you're moving. There's some etiquette we'll go over with working with deaf and blind students. Words such as wheelchair bound, handicapped, or special needs are acceptable to use. True or false?
False.
Yeah, it's basically false. Schools still use words as special needs. I changed the name of our office. It used to be Disability Services. I didn't like the word disability. I like accessibility because we're trying to give you access. I met a man and he was in a wheelchair. And here's the question. And he told me, don't ever tell me I'm wheelchair bound. I am very free when I'm in my wheelchair. This wheelchair gives me the freedom to go everywhere I want. If I didn't have this wheelchair, I couldn't access the world. So no, he's not wheelchair bound. All right. The ADA, the Americans with Disability Act, addresses issues related to unemployment, public accommodations, transportation, or all of the above.
All of the above.
Yes, all of the above. Any entity that receives any kind of federal funding, if you are a federal program, if you are a subcontractor of a federal program, you have to follow ADA standards, and basically that means you have to make everything accessible. Let me do that. You have to, for an institution, you have to make every program accessible. So let's say this building was on the second floor and it didn't have an elevator, okay? We have to make the program accessible. We don't have to go in and put an elevator in the arts building because somebody came in a wheelchair. But we do have to make the program accessible. So that would mean we'd have to at least put one computer on the ground floor and they could tie in through it, like through technology. That would be okay. Okay? But we do have to make the program accessible. I have moved rooms, I have moved programs. So a lot of our buildings are really ancient. They fall under what they call historical buildings, which means they really don't have to change their thingy. But say Rogers Hall was inaccessible, didn't have the ramp on the side, and you wanted to meet with the president, but you couldn't get into the building to meet the president, then it is up to the president to come out and meet you in an accessible room. You should not pet a service dog while they are working because petting them will distract them from working. That's true. Yeah, we've had instances in the past where people have actually had to put signs on their dogs, don't pet me, I'm working. Okay. We've had one that they kept feeding the dog and the organization was going to come take the dog away from the student because the dog was getting too fat. So yeah, you don't do that. Individuals with disabilities are not an asset to the workplace or the workforce.
False.
Yeah, that's false. Students, people with disabilities can basically do pretty much anything anybody else can. Can I say with certainty you can do everything anybody else can? No. I don't have any arms, can I be a firefighter? No. You have to be able to do the essential functions of the job. Okay? That's not to preclude you from saying maybe you should think of a different avenue when you're coming to school or stuff like that, which is something I can speak to. But we can't tell them you can't do it. Okay? I should never ask an individual with a disability what happened to cause their disability. That's a good one. Okay. That one's false. And why it's false, and it's kind of a double-edged false. False because like say you want to, you're not prying, but you can politely ask. And for the majority of times, you know, if you're going to invite somebody to join in, and they just might offer the reason why I can't. And just in conversation, you might just say, you know, like what happened, or, you know, but you're not going to ask them, you know, hey man, you're messed up, what happened? But, you know, but in polite conversation, it's okay to say, and if they want to share, that's up to them to share. Like I tell students with, when I send out the accommodation letters, I don't tell the faculty what disability you have. I only send them out and say these are the approved accommodations. Okay, that's confidential. Kind of a double-edged sword. If somebody has a service dog though, if somebody has a service dog, you can't ask them, you can only ask them two questions. Is that dog needed for a disability, and what service is that dog trained to do? That's it. If they have a pet Chihuahua, and he's just there, and they tell you, yes, he's needed for disability, and he alerts me when I'm going to have a seizure. I can't ask, show me, I can't ask them for papers on this, I can't ask them to show me things you're an epileptic or anything like that. Okay? This is why there's a big gray area with service dogs, emotional support animals and that. When meeting someone who is either deaf or hearing impaired who uses an interpreter, you should, 1, make eye contact with the person who is deaf, maintain eye contact with the interpreter, or look back and forth.
Look back and forth.
No. If you're deaf and the interpreter's over there, I talk to you. Because he's not going to be looking at me. That's the thing. You always talk directly to the person, okay? Even though the interpreter, because what you have to understand is I'm going to be talking to him, he's going to be looking over to the side to see what the interpreter is telling him. Then he's going to sign back to the interpreter, and the interpreter is going to talk to me. But just because this is a person that I'm interacting with, I'm not interacting with the interpreter. I'm interacting with the deaf student. Okay. People First language is taught and used to make sure individuals with disability are treated with dignity or respect. Do you know what People First language is? No. So, you're not a deaf lady, you're not a blind guy, you're not a dude in a wheelchair. I'm a person who uses a wheelchair. I'm a person who is deaf. I'm a person who is blind. Person first. Because you put the person first, and then this is a real good, I didn't even know this one. The word handicap is A, an appropriate term to describe an individual. B, is never used in the media or in law to describe people with disabilities. Originates from long ago when people with disabilities begged in the streets with their caps in their hands.
It's C, isn't it?
Let's see. That's where the name came from. One of the things that really gripes my butt right now is still the signs that say handicapped parking. I don't like that. I think accessible parking would fit like that. But you know how much that would cost to replace all the signs. There's a new logo. Have you ever seen the new logo? They're using it in New York. You know the usually logo of a person for a handicap sign, they're sitting in a very stationary in a wheelchair. The new logo they're using in New York is kind of like the Buffalo Bill one. He's kind of bent over. He's got stripes going. So it looks like he's really motoring. Just like that. That's good. So real quick, so that's just kind of like that. I don't know if you wanted to watch the video.
Yeah. So this is the video. How many of you saw the video on the Facebook page that Miriam posted about museums, accessibility in museums? Did any of you watch that? Okay, I'm going to go ahead and play it for you because I think that it's actually very good. Open it up. Let me just copy and paste. There it is.
How you doing, Minneapolis? always wanted to do that on a stage, and I know this is the right stage because it's so sticky. All right, so lots of love. Listen, I'm going to be talking about freeing museums from behind the glass, or as I like to refer to it, how to make it suck less for blind people. But before I do that, I need your help. So I'm going to be having some slides come up automatically, and they will advance whether I want them to or not. So your job is to read the title as they come up. It's 5 words or less. You totally got this. We good? All right. All right, so here we go. So Maya Angelou said that people will forget what you said, and people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you make them feel. And I want to take a few moments for us to consider how museums make visitors with disabilities feel these days. So how to be blind in a museum? You show up maybe with a sighted loved one, then you follow the sighted to some kind of exhibit that they probably care about, and then you try not to die of boredom as they read a bunch of content to you about stuff you can't access behind glass. This is frustrating. So, all right, then you go to an exhibit that you probably care about, and then you try not to die of boredom as they read you a bunch of content about stuff that you can't touch or smell or taste. This is even more frustrating. And we wait. Then you finally realize that the only place you actually can touch stuff is where? The kids section. So why does this happen? What contributes to the lack of accessible exhibits? It doesn't have to be this way. So maybe it's because there's some pervasive myths about blind people, like blind people don't go to museums anyways. Well, whose fault is that? It's ours, we can fix that. Or if you make it accessible, they will come. So let's do that together. No, it's not. Take a listen.
In the photograph, you seem to stand in a small clearing sparsely populated with flattened weeds in the fore and middle grounds and with an uneven arc of wild grass 2/3 up the image. An impenetrably dark row of trees fills the horizon. The photograph is black and white and strongly lit.
When you make the visitor experience accessible, you allow me to experience art, science, and culture. This is stuff that other places cannot do. This is not just a Google image search for me. You have so much to offer disabled visitors. Not only do you get a new way of thinking about the museum and new people coming to the museum, but you also get an entire population that was previously ignored joining us in our global discourse and our community. That's incredibly important. So how do we do this? Well, build things so that the features we have in there, yes, are critical for one user, but they're helpful to all users. Build for the audiences and build for all audiences, not just the ones you expect. That's universal design. They are the worst. Do you pull them? Do you push them? They really suck. They have a lot. You need a lot of muscles to actuate the things. And if you don't have hands, that's really a downer. Whereas push bars on double doors, fantastic. So who uses these things the most? It's not people in wheelchairs. It's people, parents with strollers, or people with luggage at the airport. Not to mention they have foot braille on them, those little bumps, so that I don't get run over by a silent Tesla. So to quote Maya Angelou again, if you don't like it, change it. And if you can't change it, change your attitude about it. There's one thing I can't change. I cannot change being blind. But I can work with every one of you to make museums accessible. That's something we can change together. So at the Canadian Museum for Human Rights up in Winnipeg, they have accessible exhibits. There's a keypad, an app, and mobile. Shout out to Bruce Wyman, Corey, and Scott, and everybody else from Winnipeg in the audience. The Museum of Contemporary Art in Chicago. These people are incredible. They are describing thousands of images and making it accessible on their website. Not just for blind people, but for everybody. That was one of their descriptions that we heard earlier. So I was at the Capitol and I got to touch everything, the Hall of Statues. I got to rifle through the Chief Justice's old desk when the Supreme Court was there. It was freaking awesome. It was great. But here's the thing, so that Helen Keller statue you saw earlier, there's totally a typo in the Braille. That's like a $40,000 mistake and a unanimous act of Congress to fix. We won't always succeed the first time, but let's iterate and fail forward together. Take
I
a
know why a
listen.
caged bird sings. Ami, when his wing is bruised and his bosom sore, when he beats his spars and would be free. It is not a carol of joy or glee, but a prayer that he sends from his heart's deep core, but a plea that upward to heaven he flings. I know why the caged bird sings.
So in this context, the museum's collections and the visitor experience are behind the glass, begging to be free. And so I give you this promise that I want to work with every single one of you to make this happen. We can, are, and will fix this. Let's free museums from behind the glass. Let's change the way people feel, regardless of functional limitation, when they leave an exhibit. Let's use universal design to make all audiences feel included. This is too important not to. And hold on a second, no. It says thanks on the slide, but I want to thank you guys. Not only are you the most incredible colleagues, friends, and mentors that I've ever had, but you just made an entire Ignite talk accessible to somebody who might be viewing this later online, which is really cool. I'm really looking forward to talking to you guys about accessibility this week. Have an awesome night. Love you guys. Take care.
So his thought of universal design is basically like something that is really good to be thinking about any institution. Like he says, the curb cuts, the automatic doors. Do you ever use the automatic doors when your hands are full and you just kind of hit the button so you can go through? I've had people that go in there and I said, well, hit the button. They said, no, I don't have a disability. I said, well, that's not what it's for. It's called universal design. That's what the curb cuts are there for. That's why a lot of things are designed the way they're designed. They designed it, they intended it for people with disabilities, but it benefits everybody. So that's what we kind of want to try to do with even in education. A lot of institutions are instituting universal design. Basically, it's kind of like, well, if I have trouble reading the book and somebody with a disability, there's software out there like on the iPad stuff that'll read it to me. But I have trouble reading, but I really don't have a disability, but I have some comprehension issues. So why can't I make all of the books accessible and let them read to me for the whole class? And I bet you your attention would go up. So that's part of your universal design. So real quick, so what this thing's going to be is like just like disability etiquette. And I guess I just need to, right? Yep. And this is final. Real quick, basics. Always ask somebody before you help. If you see somebody that's blind or you have somebody that's in a wheelchair that's maybe struggling to go up a hill or stuff like that, ask them if they need any assistance, because they might not want it. The one thing that I have found in dealing with students with disabilities is they are very proud. Very proud. They are proud to the point that sometimes they don't come ask me for help. Okay, which I do not encourage that they do that. Be sensitive about physical contact. That's kind of like if you see somebody that's blind and they're struggling and you kind of go grab them and they don't know you're there. So you're going to scare them more than you're going to do anything like that. Think before you speak. Pretty general rule, but don't assume that they might have a disability, because they might not. That just might be their gait. Okay, you can't just assume like that. If somebody asks you for help, then politely, help them. Okay. Again, we kind of talked about that before. Put the person first. Use person first language always if you're talking to somebody. And I can guarantee you, if you are talking to somebody like in a general thingy, the person in a wheelchair, the person in there, and when you're alone with a bunch of other people that aren't disabled, that deaf guy, it's just the way it is. That's just society, okay? But if you start using it, somebody else starts using it, it can grow, okay? The Waterman's a real good one. They don't ever see themselves as a victim. Some of them might say, why me, and why did this happen to me? But I can tell you, like 95% of the students I work with are so inspiring. I don't know how they do the things they do. If you heard that voice, it was a very robotic voice, that's JAWS, that's a screen reader that reads everything. You figure that when you have to they have to access a internet page. JAWS doesn't know it's an internet page. It does, it knows it's an internet page, but what it does is it reads everything. And when I mean it reads everything, it reads. And it doesn't put like http.nmhu.edu, because if you know code, That's what's on there, but if there's a lot more stuff on the back of that, right? It reads everything, and it'll just start reading everything that's a page. They have to be able to navigate it through headings. And that's why web pages have to be accessible. Because if a web page isn't accessible, and they start using their controls on JAWS or window eyes, and they say, go to this next heading, and their next heading to us is going to be NMHU, say, course schedule. Is the next thing that we see and we would click. But if it's set up to say, visit NMHU, then they don't know where to go. Okay? D2L is kind of accessible. It's gotten awards for being accessible. The problem is there's not really a lot of literature out there to show a student that's blind how do you navigate D2L. Yeah, this is kind of cool. Some people who are wheelchairs, they can walk. I only put that up there because we have one student here, and I get a lot of students in there because he parks in the handicap parking that I don't like, and he gets in his thing and he walks around and then he gets in his wheelchair and he votes. And everybody's like, oh. It's like, okay, you have to understand. He might have muscular dystrophy, he might have cerebral palsy, it might not be in that far of the stages yet, so he can still ambulate, but he can't ambulate very far. Okay, so don't go, oh, that guy's fake, because he can walk. Okay. Don't lean, this is something I get, two things. Don't lean on a wheelchair if you're talking to somebody, okay? Don't use it as a desk. Don't push or pull somebody, because they might not be ready for you to push or pull them. You always ask, like I said. Keep doorways open. So like, I mean, right now at this point, if we didn't have 4 feet between that person and that tripod, then this room is basically inaccessible to somebody. Okay? I went to the swimming pool, they remodeled the swimming pool. They were very happy about remodeling the swimming pool. And they told me, this is the pool, and yeah, we have a lift to lift people in and out of the pool. I said, great. I went to the locker room, they said, these are the student lockers. I said, what's this big slab here for? And he said, to sit on. I said, well, this big slab is 3 feet away from the locker. I can't access the locker. They were like, oh. I said, so you got 2 choices. I said, there's some lockers over there. What are those? They said, they're more faculty lockers. I said, well, then you can make those as student lockers or designate some of them as student lockers for a student that has a disability, or you can remove this big concrete slab. Okay. Making something accessible does not have to be major, okay? It was as easy as making some of the lockers that they could access to them, okay? Water fountains, if you've seen some of the water fountains, they're too tall. Most times you see one high and one low, but some places they're still high. I told them this is too high. They said, well, we'll have to tear out the wall and everything. I said, no, you don't. Put a cup holder and some cups at a level that I can reach it in a wheelchair, and I can push the button and I can get water. I have to be accessible. It doesn't have to bring it down to a level. Okay? Just have to make the services accessible. Okay? Service counters or another thing like that. You always want to make sure that you can be able to see. The only thing you want to do if somebody is in a wheelchair is kind of this. If I'm talking to you. Only just kind of for the fact that we're on the same level. Okay, you don't want to talk down to somebody. If you do, that's fine. It's kind of okay. But yeah, pull up a chair and read down like that. This is a real weird one. I've been fighting for this forever. We have no signage on this campus. We have no signage, period, as far as even. What I told them was they had to, like you said, Felix Martinez. Have you ever noticed that Felix Martinez, the sign for Felix Martinez is on the side of the building where you actually don't go into Felix Martinez? But what I always told them was like, on some of their newer doors, it's like they have Braille on them. And I said, you have to have Braille on the outside signs. I don't know what this is. Some institutions are cool because if you go up like that, they have a button, just kind of like that guy says, and you hit it, and it'll say, this is the Felix Martinez building, housed within our recruitment, financial aid, blah, 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 blah. Not there yet. Yeah, don't open that door, somebody's using it for a crutch. Okay? This is a real good one. If I ran into this, we had a student in a wheelchair, and we were in the industrial arts building. Do you know which one the industrial arts is? the one right across from, what is it now, engineering. Anyway, the bathroom wasn't accessible upstairs. You couldn't get upstairs to the bathroom because there's only steps and an elevator that's a service elevator. So I told them, give me access to the elevator. They said, well, why? You can just go to the engineering building across the street. I said, no, he will not go to the engineering building across the street. You will make that accessibility, and then you will change the door because they put the door in backwards. It swung the wrong way. So things we have to fix. People who are blind are amazing. I've seen some people come blind, never been on campus before. They'll come with the Federation of Blinds like twice, and they'll navigate the campus. And then they can go. They just know where they're going. If somebody asks you, can you tell me where this is? A lot of times you'll see students and they will be going the same way all the time. They're just not real clear about shortcuts and stuff that we all take for advantage. This is the way they learn, and even I know I do this because I'm old. If I'm going somewhere in a town I don't know, and somebody says, there's a quicker way, no, this is the way I know. So that's the way I go. If you're giving somebody assistance that's blind and they ask them, can I guide you, you're going to put your elbow out like this so they can grab it. Don't grab them. Put your elbow out so they can grab it, and then you're going to help them. If you change the decor of a room and you have a blind student or a blind person that usually comes into that, you have to make sure you let them know, because they know this is the path I can walk through and get through this area. If you change the decor or you change the stuff, all of a sudden you're going to have blind people falling all over the place. Yeah, if you're going to give a tour, you have to let them know where everything is, especially like bathrooms and stuff like that. Because you don't really, when you're giving a tour, you're going to say, this is financial aid, this is recruitment, this is the media arts building. But you don't think when you're giving somebody a tour, it's like, oh, and there's a fountain right here. There's this right here. When somebody's teaching class, when I send out accommodations for class, it's really like this. You have to be real descriptive of something. Okay? Right now, movie theaters are supposed to have a system in place for blind people that I can hear the sound, but what this system does is kind of like what he described in the picture, was it will do this for movies. It's the law, but they're giving them a lot of leeway for like lower theaters and stuff like that if we had one. That it actually describes the scene to them, and they have to be able to navigate this pictures, this is what it's showing me, and then the dialogue is going on at the same time. But something we're going. Okay? Be specific and give you directions. If you need to leave them, yeah, just don't leave them, because then they don't know you're gone. Don't touch a person's cane like that. And if they do have to read something, you can just offer to read it. People with low vision, it is a pretty simple stuff. Labels and signs, everything has to be enlarged. Make sure everything's well lit. Keep your walkways clear. People with low vision, it just depends. Some people have very tight vision. They can only see pin pricks right straight ahead of them. Some people can only see like 1% out the sides of their eyes. So if you're talking to them, they'll do this so they can see you somewhat. Some people can only see shadows. So there's a variety of, from totally blind to kind of see. You know. I always tell people I am basically what they would call legally blind. So if I put a piece of paper in front of my eye, I got to put it right here to picture. Because I can't. But like I said, adaptive equipment, this is an adaptive piece of equipment. Okay? It allows me to access the world. People that are deaf, you can't just remember that for a lot of people, and this is what a lot of deaf students struggle with in school and stuff like that, when you are deaf from birth and American Sign Language is your first language, if you're not real familiar with sign language, you don't talk sign language. If somebody's signing to them in sign language, I always talk to them like Yoda, okay? So it's when they sign it, it's like saying, I'm going to the store, but when I sign it, it's like, you have to sign it, going to the store am I, okay? So when they come to the point of having to write professional papers and term papers, their literal skills, their literacy skills, their grammar skills. It's not that they don't understand, it's just that their grammar is based on verb, subject, object. And it really thinks about that. For a lot of people, they don't lip read. Not all deaf people lip read. And sometimes even people that do lip read, if you have a mustache, if you have a beard, if you mumble, you don't raise, you don't enunciate very well, it's hard for them to like that. Most effective way is for an ASL interpreter if they do know sign language. Okay? If you come across somebody that's deaf and there's no interpreter available and they write, it's okay. Just get the pad and write that. Where can I find Media Arts Building? Oh, it's right over here. You might even say, would you like me to show you? Okay. If not, give them specific direction. Okay? And then, like again, like we said before, you speak to the deaf person, you don't speak to the interpreter. Okay? This happens a lot of times. If somebody's deaf, it's kind of like they don't exist. They're not in the room, so it's kind of like, oh, well, you're going to go over here because you don't hear. So you can't make decisions for them. The one thing I'm going to say, if you're talking to somebody that's deaf, you have to make sure they're paying attention to you, and this is how you do it. It's a really simple stuff. This is how you get a deaf person's attention. Okay? If you see them doing this, that's their applause. They're applauding you. That's very good. Okay. Again, face them. Don't turn sideways or stuff like that. That's the one thing I tell teachers is if you have a deaf student in the class, especially if they're lip readers and don't use sign language, I'm not talking to you. Okay, as you can see here on the board, because I just lost you. Okay. So chewing gum, stuff like that. Is this an hour class? Because this is a little long.
No, this class is actually almost 2 hours long.
Okay. If you shout at somebody that's deaf, they'll hear you. No. If you talk really slow to somebody who's deaf, they'll understand. They might, but that's not going to help. Shouting or talking really slow is not going to help communicating with that person. These are kind of gone past, say, a TTY device is something that it used to be you would call up the phone and then the machine would type it out for them. Nowadays, with smartphones and everything, most of the deaf people are just using text. You can text somebody and like that. We do have some nice things. We have a video phone at the Donnelly Library, and that's nice because it's like if I was a deaf student or a deaf person and I wanted to call Lauren, I would go to the library, I would sign up like that, the TV's there, I hit on, an interpreter shows up on the screen, and I sign to her, call Lauren Adario 505-454-3324. And she calls. And she says, oh, hi, you have a call from. I said, hi, this is David. Hi, this is David. How you doing? And the interpreter tells her, she says, how are you doing? Where are you going to be? She signs back to me. So that way we can have a conversation between a deaf and a hearing person. People with speech disabilities, a wide variety again. People that stutter, people that, for lack of a better word, don't understand, don't have the proper vocabulary for the situation. People that might not talk well. The one thing you don't want to do is try to finish their sentences. Yeah, don't. I mean, because you'll know what they're going, because you just kind of do. You know where they're going and stuff. Just let them finish. If they're talking to you and you don't understand them, it's okay to say, I didn't understand you. You have to repeat this part. This is the part of when they're hearing impaired that I have to tell them, if you don't understand, ask. Don't just assume. And it just depends with their interactions with other hearing people, especially with faculty and stuff like that, how assertive they will be about that. A lot of times they'll be very assertive, but sometimes they've had a bad experience, so they'll just so if it's just not working, I can't understand you, can you write it down? The environment again. And don't laugh at them. Simple stuff. This is anybody remember Jesse? Anybody remember Jesse? Jesse was here about 3-4 years ago. Jesse was about 2 foot And Kodu, Kodu. But again, they have access. When he came to me, his accommodation he wanted, he says, I don't need any academic accommodations. He says, the only thing I need is a little bench. He says, because when I sit on the desk, my legs dangle. And then my legs fall asleep, and then when I get off the chair, I fall down because my legs are asleep. So we had to just get him a little folding bench so that he could flop it up and prop his thing. You got to make sure it's usable. Again, accessibility. We don't going to shrink everything down, but we're going to make it accessible. This sounds funny, but it's something that's done a lot. Do not kiss a short person or pat them on the head and say, oh, cute. Okay, that's. And then, again, making eye contact. Same as somebody in a wheelchair, somebody with short stature, you're going to meet them at their hook. This is kind of like sinful. We've had a few people that have had cerebral palsy, muscular dystrophy on campus, and for the most part, they're very intelligent. I mean, very intelligent. It's just that their bodies are shutting down. And so you just might have to take a little bit more time to interact with them because it might take them, they might have disturbed speech or something like that, okay? Or twitching. And just monitor your responses, like I said. And get facts. How are you going to get facts? Well, I mean, that would be probably a point. You might not want to ask them specifically what the disability is, but how can you help them? Okay. For general terms, anything with a disability is anything is defined as anything that interferes with your. How's it now? I've got my own definition. If it interferes with their daily activities, okay, and their ability to do stuff like that. When ADA first came out, it was very narrow. They thought it was great, it was broad. It was broad. It's like, do you have a disability? It's like this. They were looking at blind people, deaf people, people in wheelchairs, stuff like that. They weren't really thinking about learning disabilities or anything like that. Or I can't breathe, or I can't. So all these people were going, I have a disability. And all the companies were going, no, you don't fall under this thing. And so they would deny their disability. So the only real way any changes happen with disabilities is kind of like the way anything, you have to go to court. Basically, any change, any kind of amendment, anything that's ever happened with a disability law, it had to be challenged in court. Okay? When the Rehabilitation Act came out in 1973, that's the one that first started disability stuff, it was written in 1969. It took them 4 years of the congressmen and stuff saying, no, we can't do that. We'll piss off somebody. We can't do that. It took them a while to get that, and they didn't get that right. So in 2008, they redid the Americans with Disability Act, and they said, okay, we're going to include all these other things, which now included concentrating, thinking, breathing, sitting, stretching, standing. So if you had a disability that affected any of them areas, we had a case where a man had erectile dysfunction. He argued that was a major bodily function and part of life that he needed to do. He got a disability. Okay. Not so much like as far as money to come in like that, but if his job would have entailed that they had to put an accommodation in place for that, I don't know how that would have worked, but they would have had to do that because it would come. Okay. Yeah. People that are disfigured, you're just going to treat them like these are the ones we kind of talked about. Okay, not all disabilities are apparent. So they might ask, and you might say, "Well, there's nothing wrong with you." And so what the thing you just basically have to do is just take them at face value. If they're asking for help and they say, "I have a disability" or stuff like that, even though they look perfectly fine, yeah, respect their needs and requests. This is a big topic of discussion here. I had a young man and he came in and he said, I have epilepsy, I have a red backpack, I wear my red backpack. He says, if I have a seizure in class, this is what you need to do, is get into my red backpack, and it follows all the instructions. Do all these things. And I had to inform him that that wouldn't fly, only because at an institution we have to, like in any other thing, we have to cover our own buttons here, okay? So if you have a seizure in class, we're calling the cops. He didn't want the ambulance called because he knew his seizures weren't grand mal, they weren't very severe. He just would blank out. He would fall, but he would only blank out for a minute, and then he'd be right back fine. Okay? Some people, like my brother, when he had a seizure, he was out for hours. Okay? But I couldn't tell him, you can't do that. So basically, like you said, you can't do anything to stop a seizure. You call 911. If they're in a chair or if they're going to start to see them, they're going to start to fall, yeah, you can grab them and gently put them on the floor. The one thing they say is, oh, you have to open their mouth and grab their tongue so they won't swallow their tongue. No, that's a misconception. Okay, you can't. You don't want to get your fingers anywhere close to their mouth because they will clench down and you will lose your finger. Okay? So you want to make them down. You might want to lay them on their side only because that will open the breathing. Again, just make sure, because they're going to be disoriented when they get out of a seizure. So you just want to make sure, keep them calm, you're okay, reassurance. This is my favorite one in the world. Okay. Multiple chemical sensitivity. You ever heard of that? No? Okay. Multiple chemical sensitivity is, we had a student that came, I was on the job all of 2 weeks. She called me up and said, okay, I'm coming to your school. She goes, nobody can wear perfume, nobody can shampoo their hair, nobody can do that, you can't shampoo the carpets, you can't use detergent for the walls, you can't wash the windows, you can't do. I'm going, oh yeah, all right, whatever. I'm like, one of my friends called and told this girl to call me up and no, they're really true. She's totally allergic to anything that has any kind of chemical in it. What causes it, we don't still debate whether it's a disability, is it psychological, is it... We got to treat it because you can't treat it. So we basically had to go into the social building in Mortimer Hall. Were you even here when Mortimer Hall was here? Well,
Yeah.
Mortimer Hall used to be this ancient building where the new student building was. Well, it was built in 1880 whenever this campus was built. And we told her, we went and asked the students, please don't wear perfume or shampoo. How are you going to do this? But we tried. The other thing you have to understand about this one young lady is she was from New York. People from New Mexico, not to make generalizations, people from New Mexico, like you ask, you know, and is it okay if? My understanding is that people from New York is like, you're going to. So she gave this "you're going to" attitude, and that was a big rebellion. If you went into Mortimer Hall, it smelled like the French, you know what? I'm perfume up the gazoo. She came out of there, her neck was swollen. She couldn't go to the library. I had to do all her research for her. I do all these things for her. So it's very, very serious stuff, and it affects a lot of people. They actually have a gated community in Santa Fe, just for people with multiple chemical sensitivity. You cannot get into that gate if you're wearing perfume. Even if you've noticed sometimes now...
Watch the camera. Watch the camera.
If you notice sometimes now, if you go into a doctor's offices, it'll say, do not enter if you're wearing perfume, scents, or stuff like that. I know when I go see my cardiologist, it has a... that's on
A
my...
neurologist, too.
Yeah. So, when we meet with somebody like this, that's why I can't have air fresheners in my room, I can't wear cologne, I can't wear aftershave. It's a very challenging one. Yeah, secondhand smoke. People with HIV, yes, you can. HIV is, of course, a disability. You can get HIV from shaking hands. Just kind of basically treat them like a normal person. They're okay. You shouldn't have any fear of that. These are more challenging. For the most part, people with mental disabilities, if they are on their medications, are fine. is when they get off their medications, and sometimes for students, it comes down to a matter of, I can't afford my medications. Unfortunately, I can't prescribe you medications, I can't help you with obtaining them, so that's what happens. So it might just affect the way they interact with you. Somebody with Tourette's syndrome is kind of, especially in the classroom, because what we have to do as an accessibility service office is weigh the rights of the student with a disability. So I had somebody with Tourette's in your classroom, and they were just every 4 minutes, it's like, and whatever you can generalize with Tourette's syndrome. I have to weigh the students with disabilities rights versus yours. Is that a disruptive situation? Is it unconducive or non-conducive to the educational environment? Okay? So one thing is kind of like, I think if we're going to get allergies out here like this, because the question that came up to me one time was I had a student that needed a service dog. And I had a student in the same class that was allergic to dogs. What do you do? I had one where the student had a service dog and the teacher was allergic to dogs. The one thing that you can't do, as I can't do, or as an accessibility coordinator or in his institution, is I can't move you because you have your service dog. I can't put you in that room and say you have equal access because we're going to beam it over there. I can put the teacher in there, but I can't isolate you by law. I can't segregate you.
So then what happens when the teacher is allergic to the dog?
Then I can move the teacher. I can put the teacher in another room, and she can teach the classroom in another room.
Oh,
So the student still has the integrated.
camaraderie of the class.
Oh yeah, this is great. So if you meet somebody, and if you're interacting with anybody that might be having a mental, we're not calling it a breakdown, a mental episode, for the most part, something in that environment stressed them. It's a trigger, okay? That's one of the big discussions we're having right now is a lot of war veterans coming back, a lot of people with child abuse that were abused and stuff, especially here with the social work program. We're going to discuss child rape today. That's my trigger. Okay? I had a war vet that he came back and he was a political science major. He just came back from 3 tours, and I had an 18-year-old kid saying, the United States has no goddamn business over there. We're just over there interfering with people. And I thought he was going to kill me when he came to see me. His accommodation was leave class. You can leave class. And he came to see me. He was very irate. But I had to just calm him, let him talk, let him just vent about this kid that didn't know what the hell he was talking about, and his opinion. But that's the thing we have to understand, have to learn to deal with if you're going to be dealing with people like this. Okay? Treat them as individuals. That's what they are. These kind of like are the same thing. Developmental disabilities. There's kind of a difference, and I have to kind of weigh in on this as well. There are certain colleges that have programs, and these are for, we have what we call developmentally delayed or learning disabilities. Those are people that can possibly succeed in college. Then, like I never tell anybody, no, you cannot succeed. You will never hear no in my classroom, but I can dissuade some people. Because I have had some people that come in here and they have a 0.7 reading level. Okay, that means they haven't even made it to first grade. Okay, I have to be real with them. Say, you know what, even if a textbook is written at an 8th grade level, even with all the technology I can get you that can read the book to you, if you don't know the definitions of the words, if you don't have the skills to put concepts there, it will be difficult. I never tell them it will be impossible. It will be extremely difficult for you to be successful. Perhaps we can explore other venues, because I always want to try to get them to do something else. Okay? But it's hard to do. So some people, and these are kind of more severe, not just a learning disability, but more severe developmental disability. So if they're not really understanding, you break your information up into small parts. That's the other thing about getting accommodations in college. If you get accommodations in high school, we have had some that say, Johnny can take the test till he passes. It's a 10-page paper, and he only has to do 2. You know, and so when they come to college, I have to explain to them that doesn't fly anymore. Whatever the class is required to do, you are required to do. We'll put accommodations in place for you, but you're still going to be required to do it. So I'm just trying to get where they're at and understand where they're coming from, because if they're just not understanding the words, or if their words are really broken or choppy or seem to be at a very low level, just kind of understand that. If you think they are kind of talking like a child, that's basically because that's probably where they're at developmentally. Okay? So you want to interact with them appropriately. Oh yeah, they're always happy, they always want to. I don't know if you've interacted with any of the population that come around. And you know the ones that'll get off their meds, right? Because that's the ones that yell at you. Obscenity. Just be patient. You know, like I said, when something occurs in their environment, or they didn't get their medication or whatever, that's usually when they have stuff like that. So you're just gonna learn. This is a big misconception: is if you have a learning disability, you can't learn. The one thing I always have to tell people when they come and see me is like, you learn different. So we just have to figure out how you learn, and then we'll put stuff together. By definition, if you have a learning disability, you have to have average or above average intelligence. You are not, as they would say in the old days, retarded. That's mentally retarded. Okay. They are changing the wording on that in the DSM-5. People with dyslexia, they just need other things like that. Clear verbal direction. This, again, in college is hard to do because a lot of the accommodations say, break down your instructions in the little places. And then make sure that after every 10 minutes, you understand. Because if you don't understand, we'll do it again. This is what's done in high school. Like I explained, can't do that in college. Because that's not fair for the rest of the class. Okay? We have to keep moving. So if you need assistance, you need to make arrangements to meet the faculty or get tutoring. And no, tutoring is not an accommodation. Yeah, people with TBIs, they're really difficult, and it just depends only because at times they're very lucid, that they can recall everything, and at other times they just can't recall. I've had a lot of students, we have quite a few TBIs in the past, that if you ask them to explain a concept, I can explain the concept perfectly, especially like in math or something. But if I'm at a test and it's like, what are the 5 steps to? You have to understand, that's where they kind of lose it. They can't recall it. It's there, but they can't recall it. So sometimes we kind of use prompt cards for those. We work with the faculty and say, is there a way we can try to not give you the answer, give them a prompt to say, yeah, oh yeah, that's where I put it. Okay. So be patient with them if they have trouble organizing their thoughts. That's what you need to do. Okay. And perhaps moving them to a less distractful environment. Service animals now can do a lot of things. For a lot of the parts, it was like if you had a service animal, you were blind. That was basically what you got. So right now, at this point in the United States, there's only 2 kinds of service animals. You can have a dog, or you can have a miniature horse.
A what?
A miniature horse. Okay. Not a pony. These are not ponies. These are miniature horses. And one of the institutions did have a miniature horse, and they had to build a stable outside the dorm rooms for the miniature horse. We're going to keep him inside.
What does a miniature horse do?
They can do anything. They're pretty cool. They had some at the last conference I went to. They can retrieve stuff. They can pull you if you have mobility issues. They can pull you in a wheelchair. They'll guide you. It's like a service dog. You know, I mean, it's like it was the most amazing thing I ever learned. Was like, because I would walk with my friend, and we would be going across the street. And if you're sighted, you can see. And you know, most people, when you come to an intersection, it's kind of, oh, I'm going because there's nobody coming. So I do this, and I'm going, and I just keep going, and that dog would stop. I'm at an intersection. I stopped and he listened. The most amazing thing I ever saw was that traffic lights. How that dog knew that that thing was green. No. I guess I just hear the sound. Okay. But they do like that. Anyway, if you're working with somebody with a service dog, again, like I repeated, those are the only two questions. If you ask somebody with a service dog, show me what he can do. What's your disability? Because I can't ask him what your disability is. I can ask you, is that dog required because of a disability? I can't have you show me what he does. You can get sued. We can get sued. We don't want to get sued. But usually it's just like, you think of a blind person. Service dogs now can alert you. They can help people that are deaf. So like if the phone rings, they notify them. If somebody's at the doorbell, stuff like that. They have dogs now that can, for people with Crohn's disease, with people with diabetes, people with epilepsy. Oh, wide variety. How they train these dogs, I have no idea. But they can alert these people that something's going to happen so they can take precautions prior to. I'm going to have a seizure. I know I better sit down. Okay? And you have to make sure there's a modified no animals section in your, if you're going to go like that. This is basically how you know this is not a service animal. If he's here, the student says, yes, it's a service animal because he lets me know I'm going to have a seizure. And then the dog takes a dump in the middle of the floor. That's when you need to tell me. Because that's when we have to have a discussion like that. Okay. Again, this is like what we talked about. Okay. Another misconception is a service dog has to have a vest. A service dog has to be on a leash. A service dog has to be on a harness. No. A service dog doesn't have to have any kind of identification at all. Okay. A service dog can be under voice control, and he's fine. The person is in charge of, just like basically any other thing. If the dog makes a mess, you have to clean it up. I was at a conference, and I don't remember where I was at one year, and the facility sent me a picture. They said, look what their blind student did, his dog. And they actually sent me a picture. So I was like, looking at my thing, and I told the guy I was talking to, I said, look at the shit they're sending me from my So I wrote back very nicely, and I said, how do you know it was him? I said, there's no pet policy on campus. There's dogs running all over the place. Well, because, well, no, you can't prove it's him just because you found something on the phone. So that's one thing that they do is they very careful inside. So yeah, you can't ask that. This is kind of important if you're going to be going into, say, like a museum or setting or any kind of setting, even if you're here and you see somebody that might have a disability and might need assistance. This campus is not set up for an evacuation for somebody with a disability. If I'm blind and the fire alarm goes off like that, if I don't know my way, if I'm in a brand new room, I don't know how to get out, I don't know what things, I don't know if people are going to be running in front of me. There's no braille signs. I can't walk over to this wall and say, okay, this way to fire exit, and then this way and go down the thing. We don't have that. I've asked. So, guess is when you want to assist. Just come up to them, announce yourself, identify what's going on, let me help you. Can I help you, please? Grab, here's my arm. And let them know, here's my arm, and guide them to safety. The one thing you never do with a blind person is separate them from their service animal, ever. So if you're going out, and as soon as, if you have to reunite those two as soon as possible. They need each other. Okay. Yeah, develop a plan that might affect people. So the one thing they always told me was, well, everybody with a service dog has to register for your office. I said, how? I said, you can't mandate that. I mean, even students that don't need academic accommodations don't need to register their dogs with me. That's not part of what I do. But I said, but I can't mandate. I said, if somebody is visiting campus and they have a service dog, they're not going to come and say, we had this happen. a couple came, their daughter was gonna come, she was on a visit, they had a service dog, and security wouldn't let them in the building. I said, no, you can't do that, and you can't ask, and this is why we have to make sure, and when I do my presentations, especially on service dogs, like I have one just on service dog, and 3 people show up, and one's my boss and one's a librarian. Yeah, that's, I think, why Laura wanted us to kind of share this with you. Okay. And practice and stuff like that. These are some of the things, and we kind of might go stuff in the museum. These are kind of things that I use, or that you can use for somebody that's blind, or deaf, or has a disability. Because, like, again, with back to evacuations, if you look at, we have one in here. Fire alarm in here? No.
I don't see one.
No. So if the fire went off, because like in most places, you'll see it, the alarm sounds, right, with that light flashes. That's to notify somebody that's deaf that there's a fire. Okay. So if I was deaf in here, you all got up and ran out, I go, yes, what's going on? Alternative keyboards, one-handed keyboards, I have some of those. Sip and puff systems, I don't know if you've ever seen somebody in a wheelchair, they move the wheelchair by blowing and sucking on the thing. They will ride joysticks. Braille embossers, we had a really great adventure, I call it. We had a young lady that was majoring in music who was blind. And I went to the music department and I told them, she's going to major in music and she's blind. Well, how can she read the music? I said, well, we have a way, she reads Braille music. So we had to find a way to turn all of the sheet music into Braille. So we did that for her. And I said, well, why don't you meet her? He said, well, I don't know how she's going to be able to do this. She can't. I said, she plays 32 instruments.
Oh my God. Oh wow.
She's a soprano singer. Oh, it was difficult because I got the software. I'm like, sometimes if you think, here's a software, you put in the music and you hit a button and it turns it into Braille. I got that. I can handle that. Till I found out that sometimes the music doesn't go right and you have to fix the music with the keyboard. I don't read music. I don't read Braille. I don't sign. Okay, so we had to find somebody. So we are always learning in the accessibility service. Every semester is something. It's always a new and it's always a new challenge. Okay?
Do you have like, when I worked at the office here for the equipment room, we have a little labeler.
Yeah.
Do you have Braille labelers as well?
Braille leveler. And I had to label all the dryers on campus.
Yeah.
All the washers, all the dryers. And then somebody thought it was really cool to tear off all the labels.
No.
So to relabel them and they tear them off again. Because like one of the things that it's like really, it's hard to understand, and this is basic what you really need to do. It's hard to understand the role or the environment or the challenges that somebody with disabilities have because you don't have one. Okay. One time the School of Education came out and they said, we're going to do a survey about wheelchairs, and they went somewhere and they all got wheelchairs. There was like 15 of them in wheelchairs. I said, that's fine. I said, go to every building. Go to every building, roll around, go to the building, and then come back and tell me, like, this one doesn't have an automatic door, this one's automatic door doesn't work, this one there's steps. We found out over here at Kennedy Hall there was grates that you went over and up to the back rooms of Kennedy. The grates were gone. Okay. I found that out. So these students were over here doing all this stuff. They rode around for like, I don't know, an hour. And then I went to the Central Park and they were doing jousting contests in the wheelchairs. Okay. That doesn't look good. Somebody that's in a wheelchair for a year like that's basically mocking you. Okay. So I told them that. I never got a report because they didn't go to any buildings. Okay. So what I explained to people, I said, if you, what I basically said was, in order for me to make changes, I'd have to get administration in wheelchairs. But I wouldn't be able to get administration in wheelchairs. I'd have to get administration in regular knees. and put them in a wheelchair. Because there's a big difference between getting in a wheelchair, sitting in here, and rolling around and jousting and rolling here and rolling there, and then being able to get up and go, as opposed to this is my mode of transportation. This is how I navigate the world, and I can't get it. Until they understand that, that's the part that they don't get. Okay? For all of these disabilities, and it's hard for you guys to understand that because you don't have it. So what the thing is, if you've ever seen some of the guides, if we have a blind student and you see somebody from the Commission for the Blind, if you go work for the Commission for the Blind while you're training for 3 weeks, at work, at home, everywhere, you are wearing this. It's like you are blind because you are learning what it's like from that person, what it's like, what they have to go through. So, I was doing that. Tangent, guys. But again, we have a lot of software that we have here on campus that we use to assist students. Again, here's some more. Yeah, TTY kind of. So kind of specific. We kind of added this. Regardless of size or income, most museums, they have a legal obligation because they get federal funding. They have to be accessible to visitors with disabilities. If anything else, at least physically. Okay? A lot of the things that, when I did some research on this, there was a lot of universities that was kind of like, or museums like, we're accessible, but to get to the accessible part, it would kind of be like, okay, we'll park at the PE building, and then ride the accessible train over here, and then you're going to get on this, and that's not accessible. Here's some of the things I found. Entrances without stairs. Quick story, quick. We built a new Ivan Hilton building, a science building, what, 10 years ago or something? They were very proud of the Ivan Hilton building. So on 11th Street, there was an automatic door opener that led straight to steps. I was like, really? I said, so if I hit this button and I'm in my wheelchair, I got 40 steps. So, yeah, we had to put a ramp on that. Yeah, stuff happens. It's weird. Exhibit labels like that gentleman showed in the video. I would say even a more accessible version is not to have the robotic voice. Yes. I mean, if you're going to describe something, if you're going to really truly make it accessible, I mean, it's not going to take that much for somebody to actually voice that this is the picture, yes.
I thought that was horrible audio.
Yeah, it's very, and see, that's the thing. We, as a society, we will basically do the bare minimum we can to make that accessible to you. It's not so much a really cheap, but it's kind of, we don't know, okay? If somebody comes and tells me, this is how you make it accessible, you just plug in this stuff into this computer and this computer will read it for you. Great! You know, because that's what we know as a lay person. Oh, they told us, all we have to do is put in the text and this thing will read it to them. So that's why you got a robotic voice. You know, instead of actually thinking and taking the time and saying, you know what, we can make this more human. You know. Thankfully, I don't know how old that video was, thankfully the voices don't sound like that anymore.
Yeah.
I mean, now they even come with Australian accents and Spanish. You should hear my computer thing read Spanish. It's like, I wish I could talk like that. It's great. So they do have stuff like that. All of their brochures now are really large print. The only thing that I didn't do in research was like a lot of them, in order to access the accessible tour, you had to make appointments because they were only offered at this time or that time and on this day or that day. Okay? So if I were just on the fly, wanting to go to this museum, I'm still against the same barriers. Okay? But they are growing, they are getting better. So again, saying this is a museum, this is a university, this is basically accessible. The entrances have to be accessible. And they have to be able to have a route that's accessible through the university. Okay, that's, I mean, or any institution. Okay. Sighted guides are doing those again, but they're only available certain times. Tours available, again, sign language, but only at certain times. Assisted learning systems, those are the same things we did. Hit the button and we'll explain what it is. Theater augmentation, I kind of discussed that before. It kind of describes what's going on and what the picture is about. Braille and large print. And, any questions? One thing is you have to understand is, like I said, unless you're stuck in that world or unless you're kind of immersed in it, if you ever walk around campus and you see me kicking rocks, it's because for working with students like this, so when they put the gravel everywhere, and I said, oh, this is cool. We're zero escaping and not really what. So if you see me walking and doing this to the rocks because they're on the sidewalk, it's because you see rocks. And I see somebody coming in a wheelchair hitting that rock and falling up. Okay? So if you see rocks on the sidewalk.
Yeah, I used to do that because my friend worked at facilities, and it was because they were supposed to do that. He actually cared about it.
Yeah.
So I would do that just to help him out.
Yeah. Simple things, like when you go, like when I worked with my young lady that had multiple chemical sensitivity, and she would tell me she couldn't go into Walmart because of the smells. And working with her, and then I walked into a place and was like, you don't notice things. You don't notice things that are inaccessible. We were doing graduation setup for last year. Well, I've been doing it for forever. If you go in them back hallways where we line people up, they have like these protruding things. They're like this high. I'm like, no. I said, if I'm blind and I'm walking with my cane, I can't find anything. I can't hit anything that's this high, but I will run up to it at my door. When we had the trees that are on 11th Street, the blind student came to me and he says, and keep hitting my head. So I went and told him, I said, you have to trim the branches on the tree. And they said, well, they're up here. I said, yeah, he's 6'2". They said, he's coming with his cane and he's hitting his head on all these branches. So because nobody notices those things. Nobody notices the other obstacles that are in things. So one of the good things to try to do is try to go around an environment, go around this building, and just kind of see, yeah, that might be something like this. See, those are good, like that when you tape down the cords and stuff like that. If you go to a lot of buildings, there's just a cord or there's this broken or stuff like that that can get in the way. But we've already adapted to going around it, or we know how to avoid it or whatever. What you have to do is then you can try this for 1 hour. Is walk around with your eyes shut and see how far you get. Okay. Try using, because this is one thing that I've come to understand. Is using them screen reader programs and stuff like that, they're really hard. They're very hard to navigate because you got to know like 100 keystrokes in order to navigate one document. And if you're looking at it, you go Control H, Control J, Control A, I can navigate it like that. But if you close your eyes, if you totally go blind, and the best way they taught us to teach it is you turn off the monitor and you try to navigate stuff like that. Try to do stuff, anything without your sight or without your hearing. And just to kind of put yourself in that shoe. You know, how would I do this? How do they do that? You'll come away with an appreciation that I have, because like when I go to graduation, I take my camera, because I have to be there to work. But I'm there to take my camera, and I take pictures of all my kids, because I always tell them, I said, you're one of my kids now. I had one lady, she was 70 years old. I said, you're one of my kids. She goes, I can't be one of your kids, I'm 70 years old. No, you're one of my kids. I take pictures of all my kids. I said, because I do general advisement as well. So when somebody comes in as a normal, I hate that word too, but normal student, don't, please don't. Because the students I work with, I see the perseverance, I see the motivation, I see what they have to do and go through just to get access to what you are taking advantage of, and you're not even doing it because basically I got your legs. So don't come with this. If you have a real concern, yeah, we can talk about it. But I've seen what they have to do. So when they walk across the stage, my kids cry. I said, because that's what it's all about. Because like I tell you, when you work with them, when you meet with them, they are people. That's the first thing you have to understand. It's not a deaf guy, it's not a blind guy. Somebody with a disability. And they can achieve anything that anybody else can. One time I did a presentation, I had a list of all these famous people that have disabilities. But nobody thinks about it. Cher, Tom Cruise, that have disabilities. And they can accomplish great things. Like I tell you, you can accomplish anything you want. But, well, what I always tell them is, you register with my office, I guarantee access. I don't guarantee success. That's up to you. That kind of means that if it wasn't for you, I didn't do anything. I put some things in place for you, but you guys did all the work. And that's all I'm. You don't have any questions?
Really?
Thank you very, very much.
Thank you. I want you guys to think about this in terms of accessibility in exhibits and accessibility in what you're doing in your projects. So if you're doing video, are they asking you to caption it? If you're doing web design, is everything accessible on your sites? Are you conforming to, what is it,
WCAG.
Yeah, that one. Are you conforming to the accessibility standards for web design? All of these things are very important because, and also, user testing and showing with web design, particularly user testing, test with people, using people who have disabilities so that they can tell you whether or not it's working for them. That's really important. And just in general, as we think about exhibit design, I want you to think about ways that you might be able to improve as you look at exhibits. And for those of us who are going to MAM, we'll be there. Oh, Natasha's not here. You'll see some exhibits, and you can ask yourself as you're looking at them, what would this be like for a person who couldn't see, or a person who couldn't hear, or a person in a wheelchair, or a person with some sort of physical disability, like not having an arm or not having a hand, right? So what would this be like for them, and would they be able to access it? I think these are really important questions, and we need to start thinking about them in terms of the idea, the thought came up where we talked a little bit about universal design. And when you design for everybody, it's not just for people with disabilities, it's for everybody. And that's a really important concept as well. I'd like to explore that concept with you further, and maybe in another class. So if you have any questions for David, now is the time to ask him, or you can contact him at the Office of Accessibility Services. And he's extremely helpful. I've come to see him. He's been very helpful. And he's, has a lot of knowledge and information.
Yeah, because that's the key thing about universal design. Is you just want to kind of figure out, if you design something, is this accessible for? Is this accessible for? And if you make it accessible for all of these fours, then I can guarantee you it's going to be a more enjoyable experience for a lot of other people. Because if you even make it with an audio portion of it, say, because I'm designing this for somebody that's blind, but you come to somebody that doesn't read as well or has dyslexia or stuff like that, they can still hit that button and get the same result. You designed it for one person, but somebody else can benefit from it. That's basically the whole gist of universal design.
I think it's good to just the idea of continuously trying. You have to continuously Because you can't just get it all done in one, you can't just make a door open
It's-
automatically and it's considered accessible. And
Yeah,
so you just,
it's,
but you gotta constantly
Yeah.
work at it and work at it. It's never gonna be done immediately at the right time. But
Yeah, we've had a lot of buildings that we, not much on campus, but they'll have the accessible door, and then 3 feet away, there's a door with a doorknob on it. And everybody goes like, what's the heck with a doorknob? I'm like, if I don't have a hand, or if I have a hook,
yeah.
I can't turn a doorknob. We still have doorknobs on campus. If you go to the president's office, to the other side, or Dr. LaGrange's offices,
Yeah.
it's a doorknob. It's a ever-going battle. Maybe we can make a campaign. That was one thing that we may, and it might involve media arts, is because like right now, by law, all materials in university settings have to be captioned or accessible. And I can guarantee that I'd say 90% of the material used is not captioned. I don't know if you've ever worked with kind of programs that caption. Have you? They're hard. I mean, I captioned a video for one of the professors, and it took me like 8 hours to do a 15-minute video.
Oh, it takes a long time.
Yeah.
It takes a
So
long
there
time.
are
These
some-
guys have all done it. Video
Yeah.
people have all done it.
Yeah, there's some certain softwares that work well, but that was one of my things, is because like, if we could make that into a money-making enterprise,
Yeah.
not just captioning videos for here, but we can advertise and say, we have this service, and then you can charge people to say, you know what, we can do this. I know. That's what they always ask me, and say, well, why don't you advertise and do this? I'm saying, no, because I'm not coming to do it for free.
Yeah, like, I just want to say, like, when you mentioned stuff about this, not the stuttering stuff, spot on.
Yeah.
Is like, what bugs me the most is when people finish my sentences. I'm like, no, I know what I'm going to say, just let me say it.
Yeah, and maybe it's dealing with people with disabilities, working with them, helping them. The biggest thing you have to do is respect, courtesy, and just acknowledge that they're people. They are there to whatever they're trying to do. Enjoy something, learn something. They have a purpose for it. Cool. I thank you very, very much.
Thank you very much, David.